All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Text 24. Teshu Yagyasya Ashavaha Sa Vanaspataya Kushaha Idam Cha Deva Yajanam Kalaha Cha Guru Guna Anvitaha Eshu Yagyasya Pashavaha Savanaspatya Kushaha Idam Cha Deva Yajanam Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha Eshu Yagyasya Pashavaha Savanaspatya Kushaha Idam Cha Deva Yajanam Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha Teshu Yagyasya Pashavaha Savanaspatya Kushaha Idam Cha Deva Yajanam Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha
Teshu Yagyasya Pashava
Teshu Yagyasya Pashava
Savanaspataya Kushaha
Savanpatya Kushaha
Idam Chateva Yajanam
Idam Cha Deva Yajanam
Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha
Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha
Teshu Yagyasya Pashavaha
Teshu Yagyasya Pashavaha
Savanaspataya Kushaha
Savanaspataya Kushaha
Idam Chadeva Yajanam
Idam Cha Deva Yajanam
Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha
Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha
Esuvadayan Siha Pasava
Teshu Yagyasya Pashavaha
Pasavu Savanspaya
Savanaspataya Kushaha
Kusta Damkadeva Yajanam
Idam Cha Deva Yajanam
Kalas Guru Gunanteva
Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha Teshu Yagyasya Pashavaha
Savanaspataya Kushaha
Savanaspataya Kushaha Idam Cha Deva Yajanam Kalashchoro Gunanvitaha Teshu Yagyasya Pashavaha
Savanaspataya Kushaha
Savanaspataya Kushaha Idam Cha Deva Yajanam Such sacrifices, yagyasya, of the sacrificial performance, Ashavaha, the animals or the sacrificial ingredients, Savanaspataya, along with flowers and leaves, Krushaha, the straw, Idam, all these, Cha, as also, Deva Yajanam, the sacrificial altar, Kalaha, the suitable time, Cha, as also, Ri, great, Guna Amritaha, qualified. Translation: for performing sacrificial ceremonies, one requires sacrificial ingredients such as flowers, leaves, and straw, along with the sacrificial altar and a suitable time, spring. And here's text 25. Vastunya shodaya sneha rasaloha mridam jalam Vichoya junshi samani chato hetram chasatama. Translation: Other requirements are utensils, grains, clarified butter, honey, gold, earth, water, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, and Sama Veda, and 4 priests to perform the sacrifice. To perform a sacrifice successfully, at least 4 expert priests are needed. One who can offer hota, one who can offer hota, one who can chant udgata, one who can kindle the sacrificial fire without the aid of separate fire, advaryu, and one who can supervise, Brahma. Such sacrifices were conducted from the birth of Brahma, the first living creature, and were carried on till the reign of Maharaj Yudhishthir. But such expert Brahmana priests are very rare in this age of corruption and quarrel. And therefore, in the present age, only the yajna of chanting the holy name of the Lord is recommended. The scriptures enjoin Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Kevalam, Kari Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatir Anyata. Maharaj, would you like to speak on this?
So qualified, the Brahmins, that they could begin a fire by mantra, by pouring water and chanting the mantras, pouring ghee and other substances into the fire. The Lord, in the form of fire, Agni, the fire god, was pleased to accept the offerings. In other words, they had to be so qualified that they knew all the details on how to perform sacrifice in a way that the Lord would actually come. Because if the Lord wasn't pleased, he didn't have to come. If he didn't come, sacrifice didn't take place. Nothing happened. The animals, for example, in the Ashwamedha sacrifice, and the horse is sacrificed. It seems as though it's a violent procedure. But in the Vedic system, it's not, because the horse becomes transformed at that time. As soon as the horse is put in the fire, there's transformation. For example, we're in the Garga Samhita, there's a very long, elaborate description of this sacrifice. And when the horse is put into the fire, The head goes into orbit around the sun. The head of the horse goes into orbit, and one part of the body becomes camphor, which indicates successful sacrifice. And different things happen. So everyone knew the body is transformed into honey. So these are symptoms that not ordinary things just happen. Ordinary animals, when they're put into the fire, that's not what happens. These are amazing things. And therefore, Krishna and Balaram personally took part. They played important roles in that sacrifice to indicate that was a different age. Not the Kali Yuga, that was just prior to the Kali Yuga, but because Krishna and Balaram were there personally, it would have been successful at any time, but still, that sacrifice can be performed according to suitable arrangement, suitable time. Here, one of the suitable considerations is springtime. But another suitable time is it has to be in the right age. If someone tries to perform the sacrifice, the animal sacrifice, such as Ashwamedha, in this age, in Kali, it'll be a failure. Because the Brahmins can't chant the mantras, they can't start the fire automatically without using matchsticks. The animal is not given new life. These things are not, and the Lord doesn't come for to such sacrifices because nobody's interested in performing these sacrifices. It's another thing. If they did want to perform it, it would be only for superficial material reasons. They're trying to get something for their sense gratification. That's not the real purpose of the sacrifice. They can be misused for material purposes, but then they're useless. And when they're done, Yajna by Vishnu, to please the Lord, if Vishnu is meant to be pleased by that sacrifice, then it works. When the Lord comes, we see in many places in the Bhagavatam, there are descriptions where the Lord comes flying in on the back of Garuda to participate in the sacrifice. He was invited, and he comes. And when he comes, the demigods all come. Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, they all come. Because it's a Vishnu sacrifice. Prabhupada also used to point out sometimes when the devotees would have kirtan or a festival, the demigods would also come to participate. In this age, they come if there is a successful yajna, Sankirtan yajna performed, Rath Yatra. How do we know the Lord comes?
Is deity form?
Yeah, there
This
it is, Lord Jagannath, right there. And Lord Balaram, Lord Shrimati, Subhadra. So they actually come. That's an indication. So everyone loves Rath Yatra so much because it's a tangible evidence that the Lord is there. So, Lord Jagannath is a special form of the Lord, especially for those who are fallen. At the time when Lord Jagannath installed, he was being worshipped by those who took care of pigs. That was not a very high occupation. But Lord Jagannath is attracted by the sincerity, and they were sincere. He overlooked that defect in their family heritage. And Lord Jagannath comes out of the temple once a year on the pretense of there's so many stories or reasons about this social Rath Yatra that the Lord wants to go to Vrindavan, and so the gopis, they invite him to come, and so he comes. They see him on the chariots at Kurukshetra, and they want, the gopis are not satisfied seeing him there. They want to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan. So that's one aspect. So this age, Kali Yuga, Harinama, 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 Eva Kivam. Steva got to it. There's no other method of self-realization that will be effective. You can try to perform one of these sacrifices, but it won't work because it requires tons of ghee. Where are we going to get tons of ghee? It requires gold. The sacrificial utensils have to be made of gold. That's why Ugrasena, King Ugrasena was chosen to hold the Ashwamedha sacrifice. This was during the time when the Pandavas were in exile, 13 years. In the 8th year, this sacrifice was performed by Ugrasena. But Ugrasena, in his previous life, he was King Maruta. He's the one who performed the greatest Ashwamedha sacrifice in history. There's never been one. Everything was first-class gold. And there's so much gold given out in charity. And Brahma just said, I can't carry this. He just left it there. And that's holy utensils that were used by Yudhisthira when he performed his sacrifice. He went and collected all those through Arjuna. Arjuna became known as Dhananjaya. He collected winner wealth. He won all that wealth for the performance of the sacrifice. But there's not enough opulence in Kali Yuga. Plastic, we get plastic. When you put it in the fire, plastic. And it will melt and make bad smell. That's the extent of our sacrifice. But in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, there's no time or hard and fast rules for chanting the holy name. One can chant the holy name in a humble state of mind. So just by chanting, with instruments or without, if the authorities government authorities don't allow instruments, and the kirtan can just go with hand clapping. And even if there's objections, when Prabhupada was starting his movement in Australia faced, the government authorities had strong opposition to the chanting publicly. They didn't like it. So they stopped it. They banned it. They gave the devotees so many citations that those devotees that were very determined. They wouldn't cooperate. They wouldn't pay the. They would say, take us to jail. So they would take them to jail and they would chant Hare Krishna. They would fast. And then the sentiment towards the devotees became favorable. People started writing nice articles. And then one song they wrote, one popular singer wrote a song about arresting Hare Krishna. You should arrest them. And because Krishna's in your heart too. He loves you too. Mm. And ultimately they won. And so now they don't, no restrictions. Same thing in England, same thing in America. They used to try to give us so many restrictions. But if we persevere, the holy names will win, will come out victorious. And everyone will make spiritual progress. And we can make so much progress just by chanting Hare Krishna. You don't have to sit in meditation for thousands of years. You don't have to have huge sums of gold and ghee and sacrifice horses. We don't have to do it. And we don't have to deity worship. Deity worship we do in the temple because it's purifying. But actually, even without the deity worship, the Sankirtan Yoga goes on as being more important.
I wanted to ask one thing about the horse sacrifice. You're saying the horse head orbits the fire. Does that mean that someone carries it around the fire, or it actually like floats?
Well, it went up in the sky and being orbiting with the planets.
Oh.
Not an ordinary occurrence.
Thank you. When we were reading this, I was also thinking, because we're hearing about the sacrifices, that for performing them, one requires all of these different things. And in the Bhagavad Gita, also in chapter 4, from around text 25 to 35, different sacrifices are mentioned, which can lead one to devotional service. And so there's sacrifices like, there's one that one practices celibacy, and they they sacrifice the hearing process. Instead of hearing all sorts of material sounds, they sacrifice the hearing process and only hear about spiritual topics, only hear about Krishna. There's one that one of the verses, Krishna explains that the householders sacrifice the sense objects into the fire of the senses. And then there is another one. They're all listed there. There's different kinds of sacrifices. Sorry that I can't elaborate on them so much, but one of the points that was made in the purport is that Srila Prabhupada explains that these sacrifices in themselves won't make one Krishna conscious. Only by transcendental, loving, devotional service to the Lord, one becomes Krishna conscious. But they lead one, so that's what he put in that purport there, and now continuing, they lead one to devotional service, as you'll see just later in those purports. Srila Prabhupada explains that these sacrifices are purifying by engaging in these different sacrifices, and there's all sorts of different ones for different people, different classes of people. There's different sacrifices for them and how they can become purified. And by engaging in those, they become cleansed from sinful reactions. So then from that platform of being cleansed from the miseries of life and sinful reactions, then they can easily pick up devotional service to the Lord. and start to serve Krishna. Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah, so you mentioned celibacy. That's society. It's like we see in certain aspects of religious organizations, they emphasize or encourage celibacy. They encourage monks, they encourage their priests to take vows of lifelong celibacy. They encourage no divorce. They encourage, even the women are given a facility by giving the women protection. Women, they keep separate from men, and they perform wonderful religious service their whole life. These are encouraged. This is good. This is preliminary. And if we add transcendental knowledge and we add the personality of Godhead more directly, real knowledge of God, not just impersonal, vague, but some specific, how they add deity worship properly, add the chanting of the holy names of the Lord, and everything become devotees, pure devotees, and they can achieve perfection in life.
Thank you. So in today's society, some of those topics might seem completely unfavorable. If someone hears about celibacy or the proper duties of different parts of society, then they may think that actually sounds terrible. But we see the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's really nicely explained just in the introduction, that it's meant to create a revolution in society. The exact words are here in the introduction. Well, I can read the verse at least. It's at the beginning of the introduction.
Create a revolution in the impious life of this world's misdirected civilization.
So we see it's a misdirected civilization. So, and a revolution means to revert back to the original state. So by engaging in Krishna consciousness and following Krishna's way of living, then all living entities can go back to their original state as pure servants of the Lord. And also this verse here, it says that this Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. So that's the state of the age of Kali. It's dense darkness, so much so that it causes people to lose their vision, not knowing what is right and what is wrong. And Krishna describes that in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 16, the divine and demoniac natures. The demons, they don't know what is right and what is wrong, what to do and what not to do. So if one identifies with this demoniac culture and thinks of life on their terms and how to do things the way that this demoniac society is saying to do things, then the right things won't happen. Because as we see in the Bhagavad Gita, the demoniac way of living means I don't know what is right and I don't know what is wrong, and I accept the wrong things as right. So it's better to accept Krishna's version of life, which he's giving in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam. And if we accept Krishna's ideas, then everything becomes auspicious. We can know what are the proper ways to live. We can, like that principle of celibacy, if one is practicing celibacy, we can see there's actually so many benefits. And not just benefits is like something that means there's more positives, but it's actually needed just for the baseline of life, just to be sane. We can see there's no philosophers or great personalities who have done anything for the world who actually haven't practiced this principle of celibacy. This is described in Brain Gain by one of the doctors who's explaining the whole science behind the practice of celibacy. So we see by doing that, one's health is better, their brain is better, their actually their nervous system and brain tissue isn't getting destroyed. So all of these principles that are explained are extremely important for human life. About 6 more minutes though. So are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu and Maharaj, for your great insights and on this topic. I was wondering about sacrifice, doing 16 rounds a day as a householder with family responsibilities and work responsibilities is a really huge sacrifice. And I was wondering, is that considered something that's a sacrifice? Because I have to put my family on hold sometimes, or stuff for work on hold because I want to get my rounds in, and I have to get my rounds in. I need to get my rounds in, but that is sometimes I do have to sacrifice some things that other people would say are important, but I know chanting is the most important thing in order to do.
Yes, that's the sacrifice for this day and age. It's the Sankirtan Yagya. So Sankirtan means the congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord. So it can be done in group, but then also you're chanting yourself the holy name. So the Sankirtan Yagya, the Yagya means sacrifice. So that's the sacrifice for this day and age. As we read, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam, Kalana Steva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatir Anyata. So that's explaining that there's no process that will actually get us out of this darkness of the material world in this day and age other than chanting Hare Krishna, like you were saying. But then also Sankirtan does mean congregational chanting. So the best way to go about it is also in the association of devotees. Then we actually have the strength to continue chanting nicely, even when so many different difficulties come up. And like you're saying, that is a big sacrifice. So these are this is the sacrifice for this day and age. And we can see people are making many sacrifices in just general society today, but it's all based on sense gratification. A politician, he promises sense gratification, so the voters vote for him hoping to get sense gratification. And when he doesn't anymore please their senses, they try to kick him out of the office. And everyone's different jobs and focus of life, the whole thing is centered on sense gratification. And they have to make so many sacrifices for it. But if instead we take that same amount of energy and use it to make sacrifice for Krishna, specifically this Sankirtan Yagya, then life actually becomes perfect and blissful. And we see there won't be so many miseries and chaos and confusion that come along with the sacrifices that are going on in modern society for sense gratification. Any other comments or questions?
Hare Krishna. I had 2 questions, if that's okay. My first question, I find a little silly, but I'm just curious. So, now we use less gold and we use plastic. Is that because in the age of Kali we don't we find pleasure in lower things and just accept that plastic is okay to use? That's my first question. My second question is, because chanting of the holy name is only way is the best sacrifice we could offer. How can we fully be convinced of that if we aren't? Because sometimes I'll stop chanting because I want to read, and I'll read, sastra, and my mind says, yeah, this is okay because it's still about Krishna. But then I want to read more than I want to chant sometimes. So can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, these transcendental books are written kirtans. So when we're chanting the glories of the Lord, we're hearing his holy name. And when we're reading, we're hearing more of the glories of the Lord and also why to chant his holy name. So there has to be a balance of both, balance of hearing, chanting, service, and then our devotional life can go along nicely. But both need to be there, because by hearing, one actually gets the impetus for chanting. That's why it's often explained as the first rung of devotional service, but the first process is to hear. So when one hears, then they get the enthusiasm to chant. So both have to go along together. And then about the gold, in this age of Kali, it's actually not available, large quantities of opulence and nice things, because it's such a degraded age. And all of these natural resources, it's not that they just come from Hy-Vee or Whole Foods, but they're provided ultimately by Krishna, but under his representatives, the demigods. When they're pleased, then they produce all of the different natural resources. And that's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So we see people who are actually connected to a Vedic way of living. It's easier for them to actually see Krishna's hand in everything because they're dependent on the land. It's not just, they don't have to fall into this illusion that whatever I need is just on the shelf in an aisle somewhere. But we see when one performs sacrifice, the demigods are pleased. And so then they provide the rains. And then from those rains, people get grains. And like this whole natural cycles working based on satisfying higher authorities. So that it goes along with all of the different natural resources. There's jewels coming from mines and also oceans. And for that, demigods need to be pleased. The earth is producing different types of necessities. And the earth is presided over by the personality of the earth. So when she's pleased, then things go in abundance. But because no one's actually following the laws of God, then none of the representatives of God are pleased to give to all of the, you could say, the citizens, or to all of the people. So in the age of Kali, it's degraded. That's also why the demigods don't come to sacrifices in the age of Kali, because of it's so degraded and no one is actually performing the sacrifices or performing them properly. Okay, I think that's everything for now. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.